Thank you for tuning in to Hacks and Hobbies with your host, Junaid. We're visited by our amazing guests coming from all walks of life. Want to learn their story, their struggles, and their journey on how they got to where they are today. So stick around. In this episode, we get to speak with Jacob Levin. Now, Jacob is a former infantry soldier and a wildland firefighter. He's an amateur Muay Thai fighter, a passionate science fiction fan, and a crossword puzzle fanatic. He's been a certified CrossFit instructor for over a decade. In 2018, he participated in FitOps, a charity dedicated to helping veterans becoming fitness professionals. And now he is a certified veteran fitness operative. His motto is to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield. And this is taken from Tennyson's poem Ulysses. So he runs the company UlyssesTraining.org, and it is a cornerstone of his personal ethos. We met through Facebook, and we've been chatting back and forth, and I really love what Jacob is doing with his life and with helping other people achieve their greatness. I am happy to bring him on to the podcast. Jacob, thank you so much for the time and coming on to the podcast.
Oh man, thank you for having me here. I'm really excited to be on the podcast. I
Fantastic, man.
appreciate you making the time for me.
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely. When I find people that are doing absolutely everything they can to get ahead in business and just continue to do what they absolutely love to do, I like to highlight them, bring them onto the show because, my motto is to, keep on going because when we stop is when, the only reason is that you want to stop is when you can't really go forward, and that's when you're dead. you know, and because
I
yeah,
was just gonna say that's a very interesting point. I tell my clients that if you think of failure and success as a graph, as an XY axis,
yeah,
there's only one single point on that XY axis that's actually failure. And
yeah,
that's when you stop moving. That's when nothing is happening. I call that, the 0 0 point.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
everything else, no matter what, you're still building towards success because you're still actively doing something.
exactly, exactly. A post I shared the other day and it says, no matter what, if you're creating content, if you're failing, if you're making mistakes, you're still a few steps up ahead. You're far along ahead from people who are not doing anything at all.
I actually saw that post and
Yeah,
it really spoke to me on the day because
yeah,
I was kind of having a bad day, to be
yeah,
honest.
yeah.
And
It,
it also reminds me of Theodore Roosevelt had this great epic speech about, the credit goes not to the critic, but to the man in the arena.
exactly.
And that's always really, really seemed important to me to remember that fail or succeed, you still have more courage than everyone who did nothing.
That's right. That's absolutely right. And that's what inspired me to start the podcast. For the longest time I was like, okay, I need to go back and start the podcast again. Cause in 2012, myself, two of my cousins, we started a podcast and we called it Still Brewing It because we keep thinking about these ideas and keep basically, talking about ideas day and night. And we're like, you know what? We are so much into technology. We're chatting. We have a ongoing group chat that's probably as long as 12 years old.
Oh,
And
wow.
right. So we talk about almost everything. And now we all have kids and we're in different times in our, places in our lives. So that podcast lasted like 4 episodes. We did
Uh,
4 weeks. It lasted 4 episodes. The time difference just didn't work out. I was in Colorado, they were in California. But then last year, I had just finished reading Crush It and Crushing It by Gary Vee. And he's like, don't overthink it. You just got to document the journey. And I had
right.
just finished my beekeeping. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to start doing it. And for some funny reasons, a friend of mine had reached out and he's like, I want to start my podcast. Let's do this. How can you help me out? So I was like, absolutely. So I started doing research and I discovered this app called Anchor where you can record your podcast right off of your phone. I was like,
What? Really?
yes, sir. Right on your phone, you bust out the Anchor, you download the Anchor app and you can start your own podcast from
I'm
the app.
looking that up right now.
Yeah, dude. So my first episode was recorded in my car driving home on my headset on my phone. That's my first episode. I didn't even know what the name of the episode podcast was going to be. I was just like, you know what? I'm going to start talking about my beekeeping, and what's better to talk about than, the queen bee. So it's really awesome. So that got me started. So when you have motion, when you take action, you feel really good about what you're doing. And
Yes,
you as a fitness expert, can attest to that because when we are working out, when we're doing physical activity, you have endorphins released in your brain that says, "Hey, do more of this." This is fun,
exactly.
right? So, yeah, man, it's you've got to keep moving forward. You got to keep doing something,
And
anything.
exactly anything. And I'm glad you said that. I was just about to jump in there.
Yeah.
I think it's important for people who are listening to know that it's not about going to the gym and crushing a 500-pound bench press
Hmm.
and a 700-pound deadlift and a 900-pound back squat,
Yeah.
unless that's like your life's passion.
Yeah.
We people get so overwhelmed when they look at starting a fitness routine in particular or starting a podcast,
Hmm.
and they're like, God, I'm never going to be as good as Jocko Willing.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's not the point.
Hmm.
You know, you get to make these small wins just by doing something.
Yeah.
And the more we have these small victories add up in our lives, the more apt we are, the more trained we are to take action, to take risks.
Yeah.
Because we've seen before that, the benefits pile up.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So I always tell people, I don't care if you start by going and strolling on the treadmill for 30 minutes a day.
Hmm.
You're still taking a huge step by giving yourself 30 minutes.
Yeah.
I,
Exactly.
I'm sorry if I sidelined you there. It's
No,
just
you're
this
you're
is something
perfectly
that's
on the route.
very
You're perfectly right on there, man. This is exactly what this podcast is about. Is making, taking the action, making it happen, and getting results. And results
yes,
could be good or bad because if you have bad results, you got see. When somebody said, I want to make the best movie out there, best documentary. Well, if you don't have 100 bad movies or 100 bad videos, you're not gonna
that's
get
right.
to that point. You gotta have bads to get to the good. You gotta go to the through the trenches to that successful point. So, absolutely, man, right on the dot.
And speaking as a professional in the fitness world, I look back at where I was as a coach 5 years ago,
Mhm.
and it's mind blowing to me how many mistakes I've made along the way.
Yeah.
Holy cow, I used to think that worked.
Mhm.
And that's just, as you said, that's a part of the journey. And that's what gives you the data.
Yeah.
It gives you the bandwidth to improve.
Exactly. Your brain cannot make that connection unless it has experience. And that's why there's tons of books. You can read a ton of books
Hmm.
and then you can go not make those mistakes. But then you will, even after you've read all of the books in the world, you will still make mistakes because that is That is how our human mind works. It wants to learn from this actual mistakes and come up with its own judgments because we're all wired a little bit differently, and you just got to make those mistakes to get to that next level.
I heard a term recently that I really liked. It was kinetic learning.
Mm,
And the guy was talking about, some people learn better in a non academic environment. They learn by going out and interacting with the world with their hands.
yeah,
And it struck me that, like, don't we all
yeah.
kind of learn really well that way? I mean, I have a pretty strong academic background. I
Hmm.
graduated with honors with a degree in philosophy.
Yeah.
But the things that I've learned that most reinforced the things I learned in the classroom,
Hmm.
I learned in basic training, or I learned on a fire in Idaho,
Yeah.
or I learned sharpening a chainsaw. I got out and I
Sharpening a
did
chainsaw.
things. Yeah, it's amazing how many
Yeah.
mistakes you can make sharpening the teeth of a chainsaw.
Yeah. 'Cause I never thought about sharpening my chainsaw. But
Oh,
wow, yeah, you've
it's
got to
a
do
it's
it.
a task.
Yeah.
uh, you, that's I could talk for hours about the characters you meet in the fire world, but
Yeah.
you see this old guy who can just take a round file and sit down, and in 10 minutes he can make a chain look like it's brand new.
Wow.
And they've been doing it for 20 years.
Hmm.
And then you get a rookie like me, and in 10 minutes I can take a chain that was brand new and ruin it.
That's crazy. It definitely takes the time, right? You've gotta learn from experience and build that muscle out because essentially it's all a muscle, right?
That's right. Everything is a muscle. You got to train your brain. You got to train your ability to handle stress,
Yeah.
and not to become tougher, but to become more resilient, to say, okay, that didn't work, and to accept.
Yeah.
And I've learned, I used to think that you had to be really tough,
Hmm.
but I've learned that it's not about how mentally tough you are. It's about how mentally flexible you are,
Yeah.
and how mentally aware you are. The ability to say, wow, this is really upsetting me right now.
Mhm.
I should, I should give myself a little bit of space from this.
Yeah. See, one thing I learned from a book I was reading is that you got to be compassionate towards yourself. And that's something we
Yes.
don't do. We're not compassionate to ourselves. We beat ourselves up, mentally and spiritually. It's crazy.
And that has real physiological repercussions.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a data driven guy.
Hmm.
I meditate every day, not because I'm, a long haired hippie, but because it works.
Oh yeah.
And, I have a disease called psoriatic arthritis that
Hmm.
is an autoimmune disease. And one of my major triggers is stress. Well, I
Hmm.
live in New York City. You know, it's one of
Hmm.
the most stressful cities in the world just
Yeah.
walking on the street.
Yeah.
So I had to learn coping mechanisms, real effective coping mechanisms
Hmm.
for stress. And what I noticed when I went through that journey was I was able to control myself in the midst of a workout a lot better.
Yeah.
And I was able to recover from my workouts a lot more effectively because I was utilizing the part of my nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system, the part
Yeah.
that helps your body be more restorative.
Yeah.
And the more I focused on that, the more I focused on improving my ability to recover, the stronger I got.
Yeah.
And it was a complete 180 from my previous training where I was just throwing myself into a brick wall, every day, just beating the snot out of myself.
Yeah.
It's not always, I've found, about going hard all the time.
Hmm.
Like you
If
said, that compassion is a very important part of it.
yes. Yeah. So yeah, it's been it's that's really That's really where we're at, man. That's really where we're at. So, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started and how you got into the business of being a trainer. I mean, we just learned that you are, you were in the army, and yeah, in the army, you're a firefighter, and you like Muay Thai. So, how did you arrive to this point?
Well, just from those 3 points, you can probably imagine that it's been a bit of a winding road.
Yeah.
Uh, when I was about 8 years old, I my parents enrolled me in an enrichment program after school,
Hmm.
and it was this guy named Ray Jones was teaching Olympic weightlifting
Oh wow.
to to these elementary school students. Well, Ray Jones just happens to be one of the world's best Olympic weightlifting coaches.
Wow.
And that's not an exaggeration. He's
Mhm.
coaching a young man now who holds, I think, just about every youth world record that can be held.
Wow.
And Ray was volunteering his time to
Mhm.
teach this sport that he was just incredibly passionate about.
That's
And I
cool.
worked with him for about 3 years. And he and I are still friends. In fact, I
Mhm.
just saw him a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
He's one of the most dear people in my life, but he changed my life by teaching me when I was a little kid
Yeah.
and showing me not just the sport of Olympic weightlifting, which is an incredible sport, but also like introducing me to the concept as I got older that you can change people's lives with these acts of kindness.
Yes.
Ray taught me that. And when I was in college, I discovered CrossFit and I thought it was awesome
Mhm.
and I loved it. And I weighed probably 120 pounds when I started
Mhm.
going to this CrossFit gym. And I put on 20 pounds of muscle and I was really feeling great about myself.
Yeah.
And the owner of the gym came up to me one day and he said, "Hey, how would you feel about cleaning the gym for 5 nights a week if
Mhm.
I give you a discount on your membership?" And I said, "I'd love to." And a few weeks later, he said, "Hey, how do you feel about helping me coach this intro class?"
Mhm.
And I said, "Man, I can't believe you're asking me. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I'd love that."
Yeah.
And so I went and I got my first CrossFit level one in 2009, 2008. Um, and I didn't really do anything with it right away. I graduated college. I moved to San Antonio, Texas. I was working in a bar while I waited for my officer candidate school application to go through.
Mhm.
And then I went right into the Army. And of course, the Army is all about physical fitness.
Yeah.
Well, I, you know, I can't claim that I did too many cool things in the Army because I got into a car wreck about a
Oh.
year after I enlisted
Mhm.
and I damaged my spine pretty severely.
Yeah.
And 2 years after that, I was finally medically discharged. But in those 2 years, I'd basically been working a desk, despite the fact that I was an infantry officer.
Mhm.
I couldn't really go do infantry things. And it was a pretty tough period of my life. I wasn't able to be physical. I was in a lot of pain.
Yeah.
And when I left the army, I decided, you know what? I'm gonna fix this.
Mhm.
And I moved to a town called Missoula, Montana. And I moved there specifically to work with a guy named Daniel Carney.
Mhm.
And Dan owns a gym called CrossFit Missoula, but he's also a certified massage therapist.
Yeah.
And what got my attention was that he went to the Greek Olympics in I think 2004, when they were held in Athens, Greece. He went as an injury rehabilitation specialist.
Mm.
And so here's this guy who specializes in helping people recover. And he also owns a CrossFit gym, which is what I love to do in those
Yeah.
days. I said, this is perfect. So I moved to Montana. And a couple of years later, I was running Spartan Beasts. and deadlifting
Wow.
350 pounds. And I was working in Dan's gym as a trainer.
Mm,
He kind of mentored me, and really, I have never worked with anyone who knew as much about the human body as Daniel Carnegie.
wow.
And, I stayed with him at that gym for several years. And then I decided I wanted to go back to school and started going back to school. And I
Yeah.
decided, what I really want to do is I want to try my hand at wildland firefighting
Yeah.
because I had kind of a chip on my shoulder.
Hmm.
I'd been medically discharged from the army those years ago, and I wanted to know, like, can I still go out and do something?
Yeah.
And I didn't really know how important this was to me until I did it.
Hmm.
And it was, a tough season of wildland firefighting. I was bouncing all around Idaho. I went to one large fire. I went on 3 2-week tours, or
Wow.
what we call fire rolls, 3 2-week
Hmm.
rolls, just to one fire.
Yeah.
And I got into incredible shape. I mean, all I was doing was running and hiking every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but I also got diagnosed with psoriatic arthritis.
Mm.
And it turns out that hiking the mountains of Idaho while carrying a chainsaw and 20 and 40 pounds in your pack
Hmm.
is not the best thing for that medical condition.
For that. Yeah.
So I had to kind of leave that behind, and I moved to New York City, and
Hmm.
I got a job working in gyms. Uh, but I wasn't training people.
Yeah.
I was doing the back end. I was learning how a business runs, which
Mhm.
is something I never knew before.
Yeah.
And so I founded Ulysses Training, which is an online training program.
Hmm.
Long story short, because I needed a way to still feel like I was helping people.
Yeah.
I know that I help people in my day job. I know that I do, but I
Hmm.
really needed to feel like I was still connecting to my clients and
Yeah.
training them and helping them. And so this is really for me a labor of love.
That's beautiful. You know,
I know it's kind of a long story.
no, it's really beautiful because what I hear from it, so you go back to, what you and you when you were 8 years old, and then you had access to one of the best trainers, and weightlifting, if I don't get myself wrong.
No, you're
And
right.
right. So you had access to an amazing mentor, right? So what I've been hearing, you have access to these amazing mentors for 3 years at a time, right? He
Yeah.
taught you, and the compassion they teach you, and the ability to just go past being persevering, and then you apply that same logic and that same mindset in everything else that you did, and then going back and working with somebody who is in physical therapy and who is a massage therapist and who's focuses on recovery of medical injuries, or right, so you got to work with him and his CrossFit gym, and then having access to, like, initially when you worked at the gym, the manager being like, hey, would you like to help? So you had a lucky, you
Yeah.
had amazing
Absolutely.
amount of luck to have access to these people who believed in you, who saw the greatness in you, and extract that out of you, because that's something that mentors are able to do. And our first and foremost mentors are our parents, of course. And so I try to be that for my kids as much as I can, right? And but having a mentor dedicated to you, a coach dedicated to your physical fitness, to your mental fitness, to your spiritual fitness, it's all comes around to making you a more whole person, a more whole individual that is designed to help you and help others around you. Like you said, you still feel like that you want to help other people, so they
Yes.
are, they're better physically and they're better mentally. And if your body is physically good, your mentality is going to be automatically good because you feel good.
That's my hope. That's my firm belief.
Mhm.
You know, I don't view physical fitness as an end in and of itself.
Yeah,
I think that it's what empowers you to do so many other things.
it does. Yeah, yeah.
You know, when you're 60 years old, you're still going to be able to go hiking with your kids
Hmm.
because I know you're going to stay fit and you're going to
Yeah,
be healthy and you're going to feel great about that. You know, you're going to be running around with your grandkids someday, and that level of involvement in your own life springs from being physically fit.
absolutely.
You know, these are critical things.
Yeah. It,
And
it
I also, oh, go ahead.
yeah, it elongates your life on how long you're gonna live. Because
And it
if you
enriches it.
it enriches your life, yeah.
You know, I personally don't believe that a life lived in misery is all that great. You know,
Yeah.
I feel terrible for people who suffer from my condition in a more severe state and they just can't do things anymore.
Yeah.
You know, to me that would just be, and I'm sure it is for them, it would be horrible.
Mhm.
And to think that I can help someone, you know, even if it's just giving them the motivation to get off the couch, like that could, the ripple effects of them getting off the couch could be huge.
Yes.
You know, I talk a lot about second and third order effects. We may not always see the ways in which we're influencing people's lives.
Yeah.
A very good friend of mine used to talk all the time about this town in Cambodia, Siem Reap. And he said, you know, I would love to go to Siem Reap. That would be really cool, you know. And then he went and he came back and he was amazing. And this is 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Well, guess where I'm going in January? And the reason I'm going there
Yeah.
is because this guy talked about it all the time.
Mhm.
And while I'm there, I'm going to be meeting with this guy who's a former Buddhist monk. He's an entrepreneur. He's written a book that's a bestseller in Cambodia.
Nice.
And he and I are going to link up and we're going to talk business and we're going to have a great time together. And that opportunity was given to me because this guy in my gym 5 years ago said he wanted to go visit Siem Reap.
Yeah.
You know, and I spoke to him about this just yesterday. Tony and I were on the phone, and he said, you know, it's so crazy to me to think that you were actually paying attention to what I said.
Mhm.
I was like, well, of course I was, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I don't think Tony realizes to this day what an influence he's been in my life.
Mhm.
And I think that's true of a lot of us.
It is. Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes you might be doubting yourself, but when you step out of your shell and you share these stories with people, their lives are touched even though we don't know about it.
You know, that's absolutely true. Um, another example, and I love to tell stories like this.
Mhm.
I recently reconnected with a friend of mine who I grew up with and hadn't spoken to in quite some time.
Yeah.
And he he sent me a Facebook message out of the blue one day, and he said, "You know, I'm getting over cancer, and I've been reading your Facebook posts about health and fitness, and I just want you to know it's really powerful to me. It's really like pumping me up to get back out there and to get fit again."
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that, you know, my posts are going to change his life,
Mhm.
but I didn't know he was reading them.
Yeah. Yeah.
and I didn't know anybody was.
Yeah.
For a
Yeah.
long time there, I would post these things and I wouldn't get any comments or likes.
Mm-hmm.
But that
Peop
doesn't mean people aren't watching.
Yes. The key is to have that content out there, because as soon as you thought it and you said it and you put it out in the universe, the waves are in motion,
That's right.
right?
And yeah, I really firmly believe that if you put an idea out into the world, particularly now when we're so connected,
Yeah,
it's gonna touch someone else who's gonna resonate with that idea. It's almost guaranteed. If you
absolutely.
have 1,000 friends on Facebook, somebody's gonna like that idea. And then who knows what could happen.
Exactly. But the key is to be doing something,
That's
not
right.
just not doing. Yeah. So create content, right? Create content or ask questions. People ask questions all the time, and that's one of the best ways to get a conversation going. Um,
Yeah,
so,
that's a funny one for me.
mhm.
I'm I try to write these really in-depth posts about health and fitness, and they get some pretty good engagement.
Yeah.
But then I post, "What are you listening to in the gym right now?"
Mhm.
And 35 comments later, or 100 likes later, I'm like, what just happened?
Yeah, exactly. They just
And
want
it's
simplest thing ever.
yeah, and people love to talk and they
Yeah,
love to communicate with one another and share what's going on in their lives.
yeah,
And I think there's a lot of value in simply facilitating.
absolutely. And that's what one of my one of the groups that I'm in, this guy's like, content is easy. You just gotta engage, you just gotta give people what they want, and just share what's in your heart, or ask questions. And I've been struggling, but I'm working on it, and I've got a ton of stuff to share, and this is one way that I'm doing it with the podcast. It's been helping me a lot, because I get to learn about myself, I get to learn about your journey, and get to learn about how we both connect, and where our minds meet, and it's been an amazing journey for me.
And I'm just curious, how many recordings did you do today for the podcast?
3.
Three. Three interviews.
Yeah.
That's intense, man. I wouldn't say you're struggling. I'd say you're really getting out there.
Well, yes, it's struggling in the sense that I'm not posting as many things or engaging as much. But I think everybody, for everything, there's a time and a place, I guess.
Yeah, sure.
And right, so from that perspective, I have an okay, I have a following, but um it's been great connecting with people, and connecting with like-minded people, especially because you can have 5,000 friends, but if you're only talking to 100 of them, what's the
Right.
point of having that 5,000 friends? And apparently there's some kind of Facebook algorithm that also checks, okay, you've got 5,000 friends, but only 2 people liked your post. Well, maybe your post is not that good. So, like, okay, there's interesting. I don't really care about that much. But again, right, there's so many different things that's is happening. Um, Talking about the deep conversations and getting there. There was actually a movement that I can't remember for the life of me. This was about 2 years ago. I remember reading a book, and this person was like, well, let's ask questions that will get people in the mindset. Like, what would you do if tomorrow was the last day of your life? And people just start digging in, like, whoa, where'd that come from?
Yeah. That's a I might put that up.
Right?
That's a great question. I want to know what people would say to that.
And it's like, wow. If if tomorrow I knew for sure that tomorrow is my last day, what am I gonna do right now? It's like mind blowing. And then you realize, we go through life thinking, okay, we'll do that next year, we'll do that next month. But the
Right.
fact of the matter is, we have no point of certainty on how long our life is gonna be.
That's absolutely true, man. I
Like
mean,
just last month, October, right? Halloween, this family, they were walking in their neighborhood on the sidewalk, and it was the, the husband and wife and their 4-year-old son. They're walking, and they're basically going to their grandparents' house. They get in
yeah,
an accident. A drunk driver hit him. The husband dies on the spot, and both the kid and the wife, they're both hospitalized. And then within the next few hours, they were both gone as well. Right. So just thinking about that, right? They are just gone. They're no longer in this world. So yeah, people say, "Oh, why are you going to that country? It's dangerous. You're gonna die." Like, you don't know that. You don't know when you're gonna die. It's insane.
and you don't know, you know, this country can be pretty darn dangerous
Oh
at
yeah,
times.
exactly.
A drunk driver could swipe you right off the sidewalk,
Hmm.
or
Yeah.
a person looking at their cell phone, or I don't know. I remember once seeing a tire blow off a semi as I was cruising down the highway,
Yeah.
and seeing that thing bounce toward me. I thought, well, that's it then.
Yeah.
You know, life is unpredictable.
It's very unpredictable. So we got to take life, and we got to do everything that we can to make tomorrow a better place.
Yeah, and you know, and engage as well. To
Hmm.
I remember one of my earliest lessons in philosophy, and I'm not sure that this really counts, was a guy telling me the person who dies with the most stories wins. That if life is a contest,
Yeah,
that's the way to win.
absolutely. There's actually a book I was reading, and it says "Die empty," and that goes in directly with the point that you're mentioning. Hey, buddy, my
Oh,
daughter's here. My 1-year-old daughter. She wants to put on her socks on. All right, so the book is called Die Empty. And he says, the richest places in the world are the graveyards where people died with their books and ideas and thoughts in their heads without executing.
yeah.
So live every day so you're completely empty of ideas by the end of the day.
In martial arts, we say leave it all in the ring, leave it
Yeah.
all on the mat. You know, don't hold anything back.
Yeah,
Fully
definitely.
engage with the world around you, even if it makes you look a little silly sometimes.
Yeah. No, that's super, super true. Man, this was very deep conversation. I loved it, man. This was
Oh,
really good.
it's 45 minutes. Wow, time
I
flew
know.
by.
Time flew by. But we do have some questions, for the end, to
Sure.
ask my guests. What is one hobby that you wish you got into?
I wish I'd gotten into martial arts.
Mm,
Um, yeah, I only started Muay Thai this year, and I can't believe I hadn't been doing it all my life.
yeah, it's amazing. Any type of martial arts, or it's amazing. I had the opportunity to train a little bit before I came to the States in Jeet Kune Do when I was like 19 years old. And I was like, all right, when I come to the US, I'm going to go find, kickboxing, but I never got around to it. So I would
Jeet
love
Kune
to go
Do,
back and do
huh?
that. Yeah.
That's yeah. I actually studied Jeet Kune Do years and years ago.
Yeah.
Um, but I never really stuck with it when I was a kid.
Yeah. No,
Bruce
it's
Lee.
Bruce Lee, man. guy's legend.
Yeah, he is the legend.
Yep, he is a legend. All right, next up. What is your favorite movie or TV show?
Ooh. Oh, that's a tough question. Right now, and I'm going to caveat this by saying it changes almost by the hour. But right now, I'm going to go with Good Morning Vietnam.
Wow, that's a really good one.
Yeah, I'm a big Robin Williams fan. And I think that was the one of the best movies he ever did.
Yeah. You know, when I heard of him passing away, I was like, I wanna, go watch all of his old movies. And I never really got around to, but I really admired that guy. He was something.
He had a heart like nobody else.
Oh my God, yeah. And the last show that he did was really pretty awesome too. Crazy Ones. I don't know if you ever saw it.
No.
But that was
No, I haven't
really
seen
it was a 2-season comedy show he did with Sarah Michelle Gellar, and it was comedy, but it's typical,
Yeah.
it's typical Robin Williams.
Yeah,
All
he
right.
knew how to sink a punch into those jokes.
Oh my God, yeah, he did. He surely did. So we know your favorite movie. What movie would you choose if you got to play a character in it?
Oh. All right. What movie would I choose to play a character? I mean, I think I'm gonna have to go with Star Wars if I get to choose the character.
Hell yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah, Star Wars.
Nice. Can't wait for the list. The next one. Have you seen
I
The
know.
Mandalorian?
I've seen the first 2 episodes, and I'm
Yeah.
eagerly awaiting episode 3.
Really good. And I was like,
Yeah.
is that really him? Because I was like, I wonder what the time period that this thing was set up as, right?
Right.
Like, is this in the past or is this in the future? And they're like really threw a curveball with the second episode. I was like, holy smokes.
Well, it is in
That's
the
crazy.
future, though, isn't it?
I don't know. I don't know if it's in the future or if it's in the past.
Oh God, I don't want to say anything that for the audience that might be a spoiler, but you think the his little sidekick is who you think it is?
I think so. There's no telling, but that's
True.
my guessing.
Wow. Okay. That puts a different spin on things. I'm gonna have to think about that a little bit.
Yeah, we can talk about it in the green room. All right,
Yeah.
next question. Who is your favorite superhero?
Ooh. Um. Hmm. Favorite superhero. I think Daredevil.
Oh, he's a real good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna go with Daredevil. He
Nice.
gets dirt under his nails both in his day job and as a superhero.
Oh yeah, absolutely. All right, last question. If you were a board game, what would it be?
Board game. Um. Well, I'm gonna go with checkers. I feel like I'm a pretty fast-paced game with simple to understand rules.
Okay, checkers is a pretty fun game. Yeah.
It's not too complicated,
No,
but there's some depth to it.
there's a lot of depth in it for sure. Awesome, man. I love it. I love those answers. All right, where can my audience find you?
So they can follow me on Instagram at Ulysses Training. That's ULYSSES.
All right.
I also have a website, www.ulyssestraining.org. And of
Perfect.
course, I am on Facebook as Ulysses Training.
Fantastic. Well, my friend, this was a fun conversation. We talked in a lot of depth. We learned about your journey and getting here, and we, we got to touch on a lot of cool points that can help anybody be motivated and move on to the next level and what they need to do to get there. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. And again, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Have a good day.
You too.
Congratulations, you made it to the end of the episode. Thanks so much for listening to our guest on this episode. Please send me an email at junaid@hacksandhobbies.com to tell me what you loved about our guest today. You could find links mentioned in this episode on the hacksandhobbies.com website.